Well, troops, I promised you a book review, so here it is. My favourite pike fishing books and book review. Roll the intro. Yes, folks, we're going to talk about some of my favourite pike angling books. First one we're going to discuss is Mick Brown's The Practice and the Passion. This book was produced in 1983, so it's a little bit dated. However, it's still a great book. When it first came out, it cost 20 quid. You know, it retailed for like 19.95 or something around that. But when you added postage and package to it, you could have picked it up for 20 quid. I picked this up from, I can't remember where I got it. I think I ordered it through a bookshop in my local town, and they ordered it for me and I paid for it. But this book, when it was released in 1983, I was a teenager, so I was just beginning to get into pike angling. I was very green. I didn't understand what I was doing, so I was hungry for knowledge. So this book was basically a how-to guide, a handbook for me for a lot of the fishing I did. Now, looking back at it, yes, it's from 1983, and if you took Mick Brown today and put him beside Mick Brown of 1983, he'd be the first one to admit that times have changed, tackle has improved, conditions are a world apart. It's like chalk and cheese. But at the end of the day, even back then, the core principles of let's catch a pike, let's admire the fish for its fighting abilities, let's unhook it safely, and let's get it put back in. That sort of core ethos doesn't change. Okay, rod technology is better, reels are better, so much. I mean, back in 1993, unhooking mats, yeah, they didn't exist. I can remember my first unhooking mat was something I made myself out of that roll of foam stuff that you sleep on when you're camping. Yeah, I had one of those cut in half, wrapped in like a tarpaulin, and it was sewed together with 10-pound mono. That was my first unhooking mat. I made this myself. I made quite a lot of my own fishing tackle back in 1983 because you couldn't readily get it off the shelves. Things like pike floats, we would make them out of balsa wood. Drop arms, again, we would make all these because physically they weren't available in the shops where I lived. The fishing tackle industry where I lived mostly catered for salmon and trout. A little bit of sea fishing, but mostly salmon and trout. Even when I went to likes of Enniskillen, where there was a lot of coarse fishing, the coarse fishing equipment was still very, very, very basic. By today's standards, it was very basic, and anyone that remembers those days will say, yeah, it's basic. Pike fishing was one of those basic. It wasn't as advanced. I mean, just to touch on something like lures. Back in the day, 1993, you'd have been throwing maybe a Mepps bucktail. You'd have been throwing Toby spinning spoons about no more than 3 inches long. You'd have been throwing big copper and silver spoons. That would have been about the norm. Nowadays, you can buy like a 14, 15, 16-inch line through rubber imitation trout or pike, that you need arms like Schwarzenegger to cast. Back in the day, if I had took one of those from today and showed teenage scopes this, it'd have looked at you and went, what the fuck is that? So tackle and the improvements has definitely made the sport easier. It's made the sport more enjoyable. But in this book, it basically went through Mick's history in angling. He fished all over the UK. He's even fished in Northern Europe, Sweden, and places like that there. So it was basically his journey through his time angling to that point of obviously 1993. Mick's since produced other books. He produced a book that was not so much a how-to guide that's in the same vein as this book, but it was more so his life as a professional angler and how he could make a living being a professional angler. This book was like him throwing his ideas for rigs, his ideas for, where to go, how to find the fish, how to map out a fishery, how to fish it with, boats, how to fish it from the bank, You know, even little things like a drifter float. Now, today, if you want to fish with a drifter float, you can go down to your local tackle shop or onto the internet and you can buy one. They're a fiver. Back in the day, you had to make them, and that meant getting an old plastic milk jug, cutting out the square to make a vane for the float, uh, and using like a pike bung, you know, with like a plastic stick through it to make it into like what you see today, a modern day drifter float. We had to make those back in the day. So now I keep saying back in the day, I'm 38 years old, so I'm nowhere near the age of the likes of Mick Brown or the other guys that we'll talk about when I do the rest of these books. However, those guys, they had to, when they were thinking on their feet, they were thinking, how do I make a bait get from A to B? Well, cast there, bit far for that. Okay, how do we make it get there further? Well, Mick used to do things like drift baits out with balloons and attach the balloon to like a paper clip, and the paper clip obviously went to your trace or your lead. And when it got to the desired distance, they pulled the line, the paper clip pinged out, the bait sunk. You know, or you took an air rifle with you fishing and you shot the balloon and the balloon popped and the lead and your bait sunk. You know, that sort of stuff. If you were to go some of the places I fish today with a rifle and start to take pot shots at balloons on the water, yeah, the police are going to come. And you're not going to be doing too much more fishing. You're going to have to go for a talkie talk. And probably not the best way to make plans for your weekend, because arrested on a Saturday, yeah, it could be judges on Monday, so you're going to lose the rest of your weekend. So don't take rifles fishing. Don't do it. However, back when this book was being read, that was how they used to fish at distance. Thinking on their feet, because braided lines didn't exist, you know, or if they did, they were very, very basic. You know, you were dealing with braids. Early braids would have been very, very thick. You know, very, very thick. You couldn't really have used them. They would have been very abrasive on the eyes of your rod. So modern fibers like Kevlars and stuff like that, this hadn't been put into fishing technologies. This was just, you know, this all came in after 1993. So they'd have been using monos. Well, how do you make a mono line float? Because it naturally wants to sink. So the likes of Mick and the other famous anglers that I would have looked at the time that wrote articles in magazines and stuff, they made bungs that fit into the first eye in your rod, and they would pack these bungs with grease. And as you cast the line out, the mono line would rub on the grease, and the grease would make the line float. So your line would float on the surface, your drifter float would take the bait out, and when you're going to wind, the float obviously sank because the pikes picked up the bait. When you're winding the line, winding down to strike, you're obviously kind of not having to pull the line off the bottom of the water because it's not sunk, it's floated with this grease. Now you can imagine the mess that left of rods and rails and pretty much everything else that it touched. Having grease everywhere wasn't that good. So when braided line came onto the market, that was a complete game changer. If you're fishing at any sort of distance, you know, past maybe 60 yards with braided lines, it's a joy to use because it floats on the surface. When you go to lift up your rod to set the hooks, the braid's already on the surface. There's no having to grease it. There's no having to do any of that sort of nonsense. So straight away you're into the fish. Whereas with monos at that sort of distance, between like 60 yards to maybe even, you know, 100 yards, at that time, I don't know if Mick would have fished at that far out. I don't know if they went as far as 100 yards. I don't want to say the guy has done this but I don't know personally if he's done it or not. So fishing at distance with mono lines obviously is very, very difficult because mono stretches. So you'd have to wind down till you feel the fish. Then you'd have to set a hook, and then you'd have to figure out the stretch in the mono. So you'd have guys that would set the hook, you know, and then take 10 steps back, so that the stretch has been took out of the line, the hook's been driven home, and the fish, you know, realizes, okay, I'm on a line here, I'm on a hook, time to fight, time to scrap. But with monos at distance, it was so difficult because the stretch in the line, You couldn't just pick up a rod and strike. You know, the hook, the fish would feel the pressure of the line. It would maybe feel the prick of the hook, but it wouldn't necessarily be enough to drive home that hook. So the fish would be poorly hooked, and you'd more than likely lose the fish. With braid, that stopped all that straight away overnight, because braided lines, there is no stretch. So when you wind down to set the hook, you can feel the fish, and you no longer the days where you're having to set a hook and take 10 steps back. You know, with braided lines, it was a case of lifting in, and that lifting in was enough pressure to set the hook, firmly set the hook, and to control the fish from the offset. At distance with monos, if a fish wanted to run, you were kind of powerless to kind of stop it. Whereas with modern braided lines, once you set the hook, and with decent fishing gear, you know, you can control the fight even at a distance. Now, I would love to have taken today's Mick Brown and to 1983's Mick Brown and let them have a conversation, just purely from, you know, an interested third party, to see back in the day how they would have discussed, you know, the improvements in tackle. And I'm sure it would have been, you know, the younger Mick Brown would have been looking at it going, wow, you know, what a change. This book's still available. You can still pick this book up on Amazon and on eBay. Last time I checked on Amazon, it was still going for around about 20 quid. You know, add a couple of pound on top of that for postage and packaging, but you can still pick up this book. Still a damn good read, still well worth having in your library, and if anything, it's an interesting little bit of, you know, history, how pike angling changed, how it changed from gazette bung floats to where we are now. Let's be very honest, Mick Brown in 1983, I don't know if he was sponsored by Fox at that point, or if the Fox sponsorship and the Shimano sponsorship had just sort of began at that stage. But with these guys, the likes of Mick Brown, speaking to the tackle industries, tackle companies like Fox, he was fit to go, let's make this, and Fox would make it. Now, unfortunately, some of the stuff that was produced wasn't that good, but I'm sure at the time the thinking was sound. The thinking was, well, let's make a float that can catch the wind and drift. Without the guys like Mick Brown speaking to, you know, companies like Fox or Daiwa or Shimano, then none of this would have happened. You know, we'd have still been fishing with the limited stuff that we had. So you have to pay a lot of respect to the guys that, you know, came before you, and Mick Brown's definitely one of those positive influences on the world of pike angling. So Mick Brown, the practice and the passion. If it's not already in your library, you're not going to do yourself any harm by having it, so go away and pick it up. The next book we're going to discuss is one that, personally, I did not buy. And if my Uncle Ian is watching this, I'm sure you still have it in a box somewhere in your house. And Uncle Ian, stop watching the video now. This book is one that I have borrowed on a long-term lease from my uncle. It is Fred Buller's The Doomsday Book of Mammoth Pike. This book costs an absolute fortune on the internet today. Go on to eBay and look for one of these on eBay. Look for a good quality one of these. Look for a hardback. And, well, it's a little bit expensive. Back in the day when this first was produced, it was produced for the massive sum, I'm not sure if you can see it there, of £4.95. Checking on eBay, they're not £4.95 anymore. They're a little bit more expensive. £4 wouldn't pay for the postage anymore. However, this book is from Fred Buller. Fred Buller wrote a lot of pike fishing books. He wrote loads of them, actually. He wrote lots of books on different species. But the Doomsday Book of Mammoth Pike is basically a record of big pike that have been caught throughout the UK, Ireland, even places like Sweden and Germany. There's big pike in it. was first produced in 1979. So don't take any of the technical hints or tips as stuff that we would do today. Buy this book purely because it's a record. It shows you where the biggest pike in the world came from. Now, you'll see on this, I have it marked. I have it marked because there's places in this book that I've fished. There's places in this book that I've done and my friends have done quite well from. Like this place here. I'm not sure how well this is going to turn out. This is the Crawford's pike. It was caught from a place called Loch Creve in County Tyrone. Unfortunately today in 2019, Loch Creve is a waste of your time. Loch Creve has been destroyed by visiting anglers and people who don't put anything back. Now, this video isn't going to be me ranting about people who don't practice catch and release. This isn't what I'm here for. This is purely a book review. This book is a cracking read. It has all sorts of different pike in it. I mean, okay, if you're not a pike angler, this book's going to bore you to tears. But if you just look, again, I'm not sure how good this is going to show. There's the various maps of the UK and Ireland. Everything that's called out here, every little dot, is places that have produced monster pike, huge fish. So, if anything, it's a brilliant historical record of places in the past that have produced fish of a lifetime. Now, these fish, to a certain extent, have been verified. Unfortunately, they're not the most, judging by today's standard, it's not the verification that you want. Some of these fish, by like the evidence to provide that these fish existed, it meant that they were mounted, it meant that their heads were mounted, it meant that they were put in a case. You got to remember that back in the day, not everyone had a camera and nobody had mobile phones, and so if you wanted to show people that you got a big fish was knocked in the head and it was taxidermied and it was produced onto like a frame. Times have changed, thankfully. There is other reports. I'm just trying to find one of them here, where it's like a music, not a music, like a. Bear with me 2 seconds. It'll state something like newspaper report, where newspaper will say Joe Blogs fished on fishery A, caught pike weighing X amount, and blah blah blah. Now that will be that's proof. You know, to a certain extent, that's proof. To other extents, people would disregard that. By today's modern standards, people would say, well, if there's no photograph, there's no evidence you caught it, so I'm not going to believe you. But, again, if somebody's going to take time to put it into a newspaper back in the day, you know, in the 20s, the 30s, and the 40s, if people are putting newspaper articles to say that Joe Blogs caught a pike here and it weighed X amount of weight here, then you're going to have to take that, you know, that somebody's going to pay for that. That's, you know, media wasn't free. You had to pay for this sort of stuff. So you take it or you leave it, you know, it's up to your own decision. Either way, I personally find the stories in this book to be, you know, a cracking read. If anything, it's an excellent addition to any sort of angling library, you know. Well worth having. However, like I said, it isn't a book that's very cheap. You know, it does cost an awful lot of money these days. I think the last time I checked on eBay, I'll just check now on eBay. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, hard copy, Amazon, 140 quid, condition, well used. So yeah, go to Amazon, check it out. Whether you're wanting to spend £140 onto a well used hardback, that's another story. However, personally, I'm quite glad that I have this book in my collection. With talking about the Doomsday Book of Mammoth Pike, I think it's important that we discuss some of the books that followed that on. Obviously not Fred Buller's book, because it's not written by him, it's written by a guy called Neville Fickling. It's kind of a continuation in the same vein as what the Doomsday Book of Mammoth Pike was. It's documenting specific fish from different locations all around the UK and the Republic of Ireland, and including their stories and a little bit of history for, time immemorial. Mammoth Pike. At one point in time, Nev Fickling actually held the UK pike record. So the guy knows his stuff. He has his own bait tackle company. He has his own fishing tackle shop. He's published several books. He speaks regularly at different conventions. He's a fisheries, owner. So when you get the chance to speak to Nev, then go and speak to him. Again, he's not going to, tell you, piss off, I am who I am, He's not going to do that. He will talk to you. He's a good guy. But, however, this book, Mammoth Pike. In 1979, Neville will tell you the story that he bought the book, Mammoth, the Doomsday Book of Mammoth Pike, when it first came out. He was quite happy to read it, and he was kind of encouraged by it. Since that time, Neville has then documented catches all over the UK and Ireland of fish above 35 pounds. If an angler has caught a pike above 35 pounds, they were included onto Neville's big fish list. Now, he would, from my understanding, he would speak to the anglers. If he could make contact with them, they would tell them a little bit of story about where they fished, how they fished, what they caught it on, blah, 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 a little bit of backstory. If they didn't want to say anything, then they didn't say anything. However, if the catch was made public, then it was recorded in Neville's list. Mammoth Pike is the continuation of the Doomsday Book of Mammoth Pike. I think this goes up to as far as 2013. I'm not 100% sure if it's 2013 or 2012. Either way, it basically documents all the pike that have been caught that would have, if Fred Buller had left the Doomsday Book of Mammoth Pike open-ended. These pike would have been worthy additions. Now, again, with technology improving and time getting more modern, the photographs are a little bit better. In this book, there's no pike there's no pike, held up on a branch of a tree. There's no pike heads. There's, all the photographs are of the highest quality. Again, okay, there is some fish that possibly weren't cared for by today's standards. The fish handling on some of them would have been a bit poor. Like when you see fish lying on the ground, by today's standards, you would have looked at that and went, where's the hook on that? But again, as opposed to black and white photographs, you're getting photographs like that is perfectly in colour, and it's showing the story. It's showing the fish, it's showing where it was caught, showing who it was caught by, and most pages get sort of like a paragraph or even a full page, depending on who the angler is. There's a difference. But again, this book documents fish that you would quite happily call fish of a lifetime. For any angler that's been included in one of these books, these are fish of a lifetime. This book contains quite a lot of Irish fish. It contains quite a lot of fish that were caught from the Great Western Lochs in Ireland. Now, again, I'm not wanting to go into the politics about what happened with the Great Western Lochs in Ireland. I'm not wanting to spend, too much time, having a tantrum, because poor fisheries management destroyed a valuable resource, and ignorant, silly anglers that didn't really understand the ecosystem were pandered to. But if you're into the history of pike fishing, this is a book well worth having. It won't be like a technical how-to guide. It won't be like that at all. It's more so, look at this fish. It was caught from this lake. Let's go and visit that lake. Now, obviously, you have to remember times have changed. The fish that were caught that are in this book, they might not be there anymore. Fish of that standard, that sort of size, might not be there anymore. However, once upon a time, looking back at those lakes, looking back at those fisheries, like personally, I know I look at the Erne as this great place to go and fish. Historically, I've seen some of the photographs of the pike that were caught in the Erne in the 40s. You know, huge fish, massive fish. I would love to potentially bump into one of those today. You know, okay, I understand my chances are limited. I understand that my chances are very slim, but the chance is still there. There's still pike in the system. They're still eating. The chance for a freak of nature is still possible. Okay, the deck's stacked against me with netting and poor angling practice and pollution and all the long list of problems that the fisheries have, but this isn't in a vacuum. You know, all of us anglers, no matter where we're fishing, be it in England, Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland or the Republic, we all have the same problems. So this is why I believe it's good to have a record of what came before us, because it would be a shame to let these sort of fish get, you know, forgotten with history. I'm going to put a link to Neville's site for this book down below. I'm not going to put a link to the Doomsday Book of Mammoth Pike because it's obviously Fred Buller's not here no more, and I'm not really going to sell somebody else's overpriced, well-used book on Amazon for them. So I'm not going to put that. If you want that, go and look it up on Amazon. I'm sure you can find it. The next book is by a guy called Stephen Harper. It's Angling Afloat, the complete guide for coarse fishermen. This book isn't strictly a pike-only book. This book is about fishing in the UK on a boat for pretty much anything that swims inside UK freshwater fisheries. The book was published in 1989, so again, got to allow that 2019, you know, this was written in 89, so it's a little bit dated. However, the core principles still resonate. There's still a lot of good information in this book, and it basically walks you through the different types of watercraft and how to use them to get the best out of them, how to space out your boats, how to set up your bite indication on a boat, your different rigs that you'll use, clearing your swims. It contains a lot of information. Now again, I say that with a caveat that this was published in 1989. I'm not sure that there's any modern day books strictly dedicated to coarse fishing afloat. I bought this book purely because I was interested in buying a boat and I wanted to figure out how to go and do it without drowning myself, because, you know, drowning sucks. Let's not do that. Basic safety features, safety issues for fishing in a boat is little things like a life jacket. Get a life jacket. Don't use it as a cushion for your seat. Wear the damn thing. You know, every year there's people drown fishing here in the UK and Ireland. So wear a life jacket. I see it every year. I see crazy people on somewhere like Loch Earn, on the Broad Loch in Loch Earn, in a 10-foot inflatable boat, and the wind's pushing them like that there across the loch, and they're just waving at you. And you think, yeah, I'm going to read about you in tomorrow's paper, son. Anyway, this book, brilliant book. It shows you things like drogues, how to slow yourself down when the wind's pushing you. It shows you things like how to anchor up. It shows you things like how to clear your swims. If you're using a boat to go and clear a swim, it shows you little things like how to build a weed rake for that. It shows you lots and lots of information. Well worth the money. When this was produced back in 89, it went for £15. I picked this up from a second-hand bookshop. I think it was in Lincolnshire, and I think it was 25 quid then. So again, still out there. Stephen Harper produces quite a lot of books for the fishing community. Stephen Harper is one of these anglers that you see, you know, he just seems to catch big fish as well. He's one of those guys that you look at and you think, I wonder how he does it. But Stephen's books, you know, we'll cover a few more of them in the next video, but this is just a quick entry. This is Angling Afloat. If you don't fish from the boat and you fish purely from the bank, then don't buy this book, because it's of no use to you, unless you want it to have in your library for weekly. I'm going to discuss 3 books in one here. Now, not because they're all written by the same author. They're not. One of them is written by a guy called Dave Horton. The other one's written by Stephen Harper. We've just talked about one of Stephen's books, Angling Afloat. Stephen's, he writes a lot of books. Dream Pike and Extreme Pike. These are two of Stephen's books that are, again, well worth picking up. These are purely stories from very good anglers describing catching, again, extreme pike and fish that are classed as dream pike. Before these books came out, Dave Horton kind of set the tone by writing his book, Ultimate Pike. Now, when I was growing up in the 90s, through the 90s learning to fish, Dave Horton was one of those guys that you've always seen in the angling media holding an absolute beast of a pike, holding something that was huge. He was known for his white hat that he always wore, so you always seen this and you always thought, I wonder how he does that. Now, Dave's been lucky enough to catch pike again all over the UK and Ireland. He's had some fish of a lifetime, many times over he's had fish of a lifetime. He is active on the social media platforms and he is active on the various forums. So you can go up and you can talk to Dave and say, hello, how are you doing? I quite liked your book. Big thumbs up. Again, he'll chat to you. He's a good guy. If you meet him on the bank, again, talk to you. He's a good guy. He's one of those people that's very down to earth. So if you see this book, then pick it up. If you see this book and it's like underneath 100 quid, it's a bargain. Obviously, if it's not falling to bits. This is the second copy of this book I had to buy. The first copy I bought and it cost 30 quid. Second copy cost me £85. Why did I have to buy a second copy? Well, that's a good question. I had a psycho woman, bad woman, who thought it would be funny to set fire to all my stuff. So somewhere there's irony in that, because Dave's job, Dave was a fireman, so Psycho X setting fire to all my stuff, destroying my book written by a famous pike angling fireman. Irony. At least I think irony was the word I was looking for. Even to this day, I'm still sore about that one. The next book I'm going to talk about is another one written by Neville Fickling. It is Big Water Pike Fishing. Neville basically took a collection of anglers that are renowned for fishing on big expanses of water, and he put all their information and all their know-how into this book. In the book, you have guys that fish in Scotland, you have guys that fish in Ireland, you have guys that fish all over England. You even have guys that go across and fish in the Baltic, in like the Swedish, all the fjords and stuff like that there. Now, you can't get any bigger expanse of water than what you can in the North Sea. So you have guys that know how to do it. And this book lists lake by lake, loch by loch, big expanses of water and how guys have fished them and how they got the best from them. It's described types of boats. It's described, things like anchor setups. It's got rigs in it, how to fish on deep marginal shelves. It's like a collection of stories of how guys have caught pike, to like actually showing you what to do if you're ever getting the chance to fish on some of these big lochs. Now, on a personal note, fishing a big loch, or a big lake or anything like that there, safety has to be paramount. If you're going out in a little 10-foot boat onto one of these places, then you're asking for trouble. Big fisheries tend to mean that you take out a bigger boat. Don't go undergunned. Overkill is underrated, as they say. And again, it's like, wear life jackets. I can't emphasize that enough. We're all pike anglers. We fish in the winter time. The water usually is, just above freezing. You fall in the water without a life jacket, and you'll struggle to pull yourself out of the water into your boat again. I'm going to tell you a story of something that I had personal experience with. I was fishing up in the Lake District with a very good friend of mine. We borrowed his boat from well, it wasn't his boat, it was his friend's boat. And it was okay, it was a nice enough boat. The outboard was well, we thought it was serviceable. And away we set off on this lake. The day started off like it was flat calm, perfectly flat calm. It was a nice place. We were trolling dead bits and lures. It got to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the weather changed a little bit. It got a little bit rougher. The wind started to buffet us and push us into a small bay. I thought, okay, we'll turn the boat and we'll get back to safety because it's getting a bit dicey and it's only a couple of hours of daylight left, so we'll get back. Engine stopped. Shit. Started to row. No good. Wind was pushing us. Once you get side on, it's sort of like on these bigger places, then you could get swamped and you could get capsized, and that's not any good. It was getting a little bit. The old bum was doing the 10p 5p thing. It wasn't any good. It wasn't fun. I was at the front of the boat because, again, I was a novice boat angler. I didn't really do much boat fishing. This is probably the reason why I done even less boat fishing. But I checked the depth finder, and the depth finder says it was only 4 feet deep. And in stupid brain, thought, I'll over the side, I'll drag the boat up the field, and that way we won't get swamped. We won't get, because at that point there was water hitting the side of the boat and coming into the boat, and it was getting a bit hairy. So I jumped off the side of the boat. Unfortunately, I didn't tell this plan to my friend who was at the back end of the boat, who started now to freak out. What I thought was 4 feet it was 4 feet of water to about 6 feet of silt and crap. So I started to swim. I wasn't exactly no Olympic swimmer. I managed to get us pulled onto harder footing, and I dragged the boat up the bank. I then collapsed in the field. I was freezing, soaked wet through, and I collapsed in the field. My friend was busy screaming at me, calling me all the stupid bastards under the sun. And I was there lying on the ground, and it felt like there was pins and needles, traveling up my legs and my arms. It felt like the pins and needles were coming closer and closer and closer to my chest. I was kind of getting a bit stupid, a bit delirious, and I wasn't really coping well. This is hypothermia. Thankfully for me, there was a lady in a farmhouse who had witnessed this, and she sent her husband down in the tractor, who put me in the back of the tractor along with my friend, took us to her house, and I was put into a bath of water. I was there thinking at the time, magic, more water. However, it was lukewarm, and it was something that just kind of revived you slowly. The last thing you want, if you fell into cold water, is to get het up too quickly, because then the cold blood rushes to your heart and gives you a heart attack. So if it ever happens to you and you fall into freezing cold water, warm up slowly. Now, you could do that simply by finding a bath of lukewarm water, not always easy, or you can get your man love on and cuddle your friend. His body temperature will warm up you. Fortunately, it'll suck to be him, and he won't thank you, but his body temperature will gradually warm your core up so that you don't have the cold blood running to your heart and the heart attack. Nobody wants to go fishing and have a heart attack. I mean, that's just going to put a dampener on the plans for the rest of the weekend, like having a beer and trying to chat up a woman. You got to think these things through. Looking back on that event, if I could go back and thump 21-year-old me's head, I would quite happily punch lumps into myself for saying, don't be so fucking stupid. Again, emphasizing, wear a life jacket. Guess who was sat in his? So when I say to you, wear a life jacket, folks, it's experience that I'm saying it to you with. The next book we're going to discuss was published in 1985. Now, 1985, I was 4 years old. This book is called Pike, The Predator Becomes the Prey. Now, again, even though it was written in 1985, still has a lot of good information in here. Remember, we talked earlier on in this video about the balloon method, where we would use a balloon to potentially move a bait across a fishery, and early drifter float methods. Well, there you go. Again, I'm not too sure how this is looking for you, but that is technical drawings of how to do the balloon method. You all thought I was telling you fibs, didn't you? Talking about shooting balloons on fisheries. Maybe next time you listen to me. This is purely, again, it's a mixture of, it's not purely, technical details, it's not purely angler stories. It's like a mixture of both, You have guys that fished all over the UK. There's paragraphs in it from Mick Brown. You have guys that we've discussed on this video. You guys like Stephen Harper's in this book. Lots of very technically gifted anglers were lucky enough, well, not lucky enough, we were fortunate enough to have these guys putting down their expertise and what goes on in their head to basically what gives us today's modern pike angling. This is like a historical book full of the old rigs that people used to use and the old methods people used to fish with. Eddie Turner's super rigs in here, where he was discussing how to use bigger live baits like big rainbow trout, because at the time the rainbow trout fisheries had just really began to become really popular, and people had begun to realize that the pike in these fisheries are going to grow fat. They're going to grow big and healthy, well, they're going to grow fat because they're getting fed rainbow trout. Rainbow trout are super high in protein. Rainbow trout aren't typically very bright, so the pike were having an easy meal. Now, typically in the world of pike angling, there is like a hostility between trout anglers and pike anglers. So pike anglers wouldn't be the most popular on some of the big trout fisheries. We see this here in like Northern Ireland all the time, where if I go to the Erne, there's still rules on parts of the Erne where you can't use ground bait, you can't fish for, it restricts coarse angling because that apparently is the designated game angling parts. And a lot of this is nonsense. A lot of it's proven scientifically to be nonsense. I mean, if you go down south to Loch Corrib and Loch Mask, we've had decades and decades and decades of gill netting, and pike basically be treated like vermin. That hasn't eradicated the pike, and it certainly hasn't helped the trout numbers. The elephant in the room being pollution and, poor angling practice, like trout competitions where they go and they kill 10 trout per man, and then they wonder why the numbers fell. But again, that's another video. This book here, believe it or not, I picked this book up for £3. £3. And it was an absolute gem. £3. I can't really go wrong. I picked it up at the same place as I got the Angling Afloat book. And I thought, awesome, I'll give that a read. And it was only until I read it that I realized, Jesus, these guys documented the rigs, the tips and the tricks, like things like the Colin Dyson rig, where baits were suspended with a little polystyrene ball off the bottom. These guys were documenting all that stuff. If only I had something like this when I was a teenager, because that would have been very influential. It would have been very, very good, because it went through line by line how to set up specific rigs to do specific things. So I'm kind of gutted that I didn't find this book until I was into my late 20s. But if you see this book out there, now I picked it up in a second-hand bookshop for about £3. It was an absolute bargain. And since then, it's a book that if people ask me, they're wanting to get into pike angling, can you show them how to do it? I don't like giving books away to people. I don't like, because they get lent out and sometimes they come back and they've not been the best cared for. So giving out books tends to be no for me, but I tend to turn and say to people, well, this is a book, go away and buy this one. This is a book, go away and get this one, or check it out from the library if it isn't a library, or go on to the internet. The days of me telling people, realistically now, go away and look at a book, are probably long gone forever. YouTube has saw to that there. So Pike, the predator becomes the prey. Again, a cracking read if you can get hold of it, and it was well worth £3. Two honourable mentions here. These are books that were both given to me as Christmas presents or birthday presents or gifts, and I still have them. They are the Mick Brown's Guide to Pike and Predators and the Fox Guide to Modern Pike Fishing. This one is basically all of the anglers that were working for Fox at the time. I think this is 2002. Hold on, I'll just double check. Don't want to be giving you spoof information. No, 2006. So this is 2006. This is all the guys that were working for Fox, all their stuff like their lures, their baits, even the fly fishing side of it, they touch on it in here. This other one, surprise, surprise, is Mick Brown's own guide. Now, at the time, Mick was sponsored by Fox, so it'll be Mick Brown showing you how he does pike fishing his way, except he's using, Fox tackle. If you don't like Fox tackle, I understand that Fox tackle has a bit of a weird public image. Some people like it, some other people don't like it. A lot of the stuff that, they make didn't tend to have the best build quality, but it is what it is. This isn't just strictly a guide to pike fishing. This covers zander, covers eels, it even covers catfish, and I think it even covers chub. They mention chub in it as well. But it's full of, technical how-to guides, how to make a tress. There'll be rig information, how to do a float fishing rig, how to do a, simple float rig. It's a modern day take on pike fishing. Well, I say modern, it's from 2002. It was 2009. It was 2009. So, like I said, these here were both given to me by, friends and relatives for Christmas or for birthdays, because I'm into pike fishing, because, it looks like a handy gift, for somebody that's into pike angling. Would I go and buy these myself? Probably not. Again, they're not really targeted for people like me. They're more so targeted for people that are just beginning their angling journey into fishing for pike and predators, I suppose. If you are a novice or a youngster angler out there looking for these retail for 12 quid each. So if you are a novice angler or a youngster that is unsure on how to do things, this book is pretty good to pick up. And again, the Modern Guide to Pike Angling, both of them retail for £12 each. £24, I'm sure in today's money that's easy pocket money for most youngsters out there. Like I said before, the days of people going and picking up books for instruction might be coming to an end, where everyone's now looking on the internet, looking at YouTube. But for those happy few that still read books out there, these here, well worth your money. Like I say, two of them for 24 quid. If you're the parent out there who's got a youngster that's just starting angling, these aren't a bad stocking filler. Not a bad gift at all. If you want to kind of give them something that gets them off the computer for 20 minutes, or they're all right, I mean, there's lots of pictures in them, so it keeps, it's easy to follow. It's an easy guide. Like I say, 12 quid a piece, well worth the money. So there you have it, guys. This is just a review on some of the books that I quite enjoyed. I can't go over every single book that I have, because the video would be like 6 hours long. I've got more pike angling books. Again, I've got books for different species, books that date, that are older, right up to more modern time books. Again, if I see a book out there and I think this will be interesting, I tend to pick it up and I tend to buy it. I like books. I can't help that. But I want to say thanks to everyone who's watched this video and, maybe got a bit of a kick out of it. If you're sat at home right now thinking, I'm going to go and look at some of these books or try and pick up some of these books, then hey, fine, cool. I hope you enjoy them as much as I enjoyed them. If you're one of these people that's looking at this going, my other half, he quite likes pike fishing, I'll buy him this book, that'll shut him up. Well then, again, great idea. Buy somebody a book. Again, I want to say thanks to everyone that's watched the videos or watching my channel and likes the channel and all this sort of stuff. I'm amazed that I have over 400 people that subscribe to my channel. That blows my mind that there's people out there that listen to some of the nonsense that I come out with. So I just want to say thanks. Cheers, guys.